Welcome to Echo and Ash, and thank you for tuning in to another original audio experience. Today we are continuing our storyline titled Ghost in the Snow. This is episode 2. Please sit back, relax, and let the story unfold.
15th of February, 20 to 28. The morning broke not with a sunrise, but with a slow, grudging dilution of the darkness. The sky transitioned from the deep, star-pricked indigo of the Arctic night to a flat, featureless gray that promised little in the way of warmth. Inside the mess tent, the air was thick with the scent of strong coffee and the low hum of their small generator. The unease from Dmitri's words the night before lingered, an unspoken guest at their breakfast. "Drone's up," Chloe announced, her eyes fixed on the tablet that was her window to the sky. "Thermal sweep is showing nothing but cold ground and colder trees. It's like the whole damn continent is on ice." "Keep looking," Ben said, poring over a topographical map spread across the fold-out table. "Dmitri, those wolf tracks from yesterday. What direction was it heading?" The guide, who had been methodically cleaning his rifle, looked up. He pointed a leather-gloved finger to a spot on the map to the northeast. "Towards the Kolyma Highlands, but it was not running to something. It was running from something, from the south." Kira, who had been analyzing the grouse droppings from the day before under a portable microscope, looked up, her expression sharp. "The south is where the permafrost thaw is most aggressive. The satellite data shows massive land subsidence and dozens of new thermokarst lakes forming." "And thermokarst lakes mean methane release," Ben finished, the pieces clicking into place. "Gas pockets. Could a localized methane or hydrogen sulfide release kill off the local fauna? It would explain the lack of struggle." "It is a plausible theory," Kira conceded, "but it would have to be incredibly concentrated. And it does not explain why a wolf would be fleeing from miles away. Animals are not afraid of gas, they just avoid it." "All right, new plan for the day," Ben announced, making a decision. "I want to investigate that southern basin. Dmitri, you said the wolf was coming from there. Lead us in. Mac, Chloe, I want you to document everything. Any signs of geological instability, any more dead animals. Kira, you're on atmospheric duty. Let's see if we can get a reading on this gas theory." There was a renewed sense of purpose as they broke camp. A theory, even a grim one, was better than a shapeless dread. It was a problem they could tackle, a puzzle they could solve. They moved south for 2 hours, descending from the rolling hills into a wide, marshy basin dotted with stunted, skeletal-looking larch trees. The air here felt different. Heavier. The silence was more profound, unbroken even by the cawing of a raven or the chatter of a squirrel. "The air smells heavy," Chloe said over the comms, her voice a little hesitant. "I'm getting slightly elevated methane readings," Kira confirmed a moment later, her voice tight with concentration as she monitored a handheld device. "But it is trace amounts. Not nearly enough to be toxic." It was Dmitri who stopped first. He stood dead still, his head cocked, his eyes narrowed. He was a predator sensing a change in the wind. He didn't raise a hand this time. He simply stopped, and the rest of the team halted behind him, the sudden stop a silent alarm. "Dmitri?" Ben whispered into his radio. The guide didn't answer. He took 2 slow, deliberate steps forward, his gaze fixed on a spot behind a thicket of snow-laden birch. He unslung the rifle from his shoulder, the soft snick of the safety being disengaged unnaturally loud in the dead air. The team tensed, their own hands going to the cans of bear spray holstered on their belts. Dmitri slowly rounded the thicket. He stopped again. After a moment, he lowered his rifle. He turned back to the team, his face a stony, unreadable mask, and beckoned them forward. They found the site in a small clearing, a natural depression sheltered from the wind. It was not a scene of violence, but one of absolute, horrifying stillness. A large female Eurasian lynx, her magnificent spotted coat, barely disturbed by the light dusting of snow, lay curled on her side as if in deep sleep. Her head was tucked towards her belly, where two kittens, their fur impossibly soft and thick, were nestled against her. Their eyes were closed, their tiny paws curled into their mother's fur. The scene was so peaceful, so perfect, that for a moment Ben thought they were merely sleeping. But the utter lack of movement, the absence of even the faintest puff of condensed breath, told the real story. "My God," Chloe whispered, her hand going to her mouth. The words were almost identical to those she had spoken just yesterday, but this time they were freighted with a much deeper awe and horror. Mac let out a low whistle, his camera already up, his professional instincts kicking in. "It's a photograph already," he murmured, his voice hushed. "A goddamn pieta in the snow." He began to circle the scene, the shutter of his camera a series of soft, respectful clicks. He was no longer just a photographer, he was an archivist, preserving a sacred, terrible moment. Ben knelt, the cold of the snow seeping through his insulated trousers. He ran his eyes over the scene, his mind a frantic whirl of scientific analysis. "No tracks but their own," he said, his voice low. "No blood, no signs of a struggle with a wolf or bear." He looked at Kira. "It's the same as your grouse theory. They just stopped." Kira was already pulling on a fresh pair of latex gloves, her face a mask of intense focus. The earlier unease was gone, replaced by a cold, clinic fire. "This is it, Ben. This is not a theory. This is a data point, an unexplained multi-animal mortality event in a keystone predator." She looked at him, her eyes bright and fierce. "This is the story. Forget the camera traps." Ben nodded slowly, his own mind racing. Methane poisoning? A localized anoxia event? "Kira, I want full samples. Tissue from all three animals. Lungs, liver, brain. I want to know what they ate, what they drank, what they breathed." He turned to Mac and Chloe. "I need every angle. I want this scene documented so thoroughly we can recreate it in a lab." "On it," Mac said, his voice all business. He directed Chloe with quiet commands. "Chloe, get in close. Macro lens. I want you to capture the texture of the fur, the ice crystals on the whiskers. Don't just show us dead animals. Find the emotion in it. Show us the story of a family." Chloe, her initial shock giving way to a familiar sense of purpose, nodded. This was her job. This was the work. She moved in on her knees, her camera a shield against the profound sadness of the scene. She started with the kittens, their faces so heartbreakingly serene. She framed a shot of a tiny, perfect paw resting on the mother's flank. Then she moved to the mother herself, wanting to capture the tragic juxtaposition of her powerful, predatory form and her placid, gentle end. The world narrowed to the small circle of her viewfinder. In that circle, the vast, intimidating wilderness disappeared, replaced by an intimate landscape of gray and white fur, the delicate, frozen filigree of an eyelash, the peaceful, slightly parted curve of a lip. It was beautiful. It was sad. It was perfect. "That's it, kid. Hold that," Mac encouraged, his voice a low murmur. "Get closer. Fill the frame with her face. Make us feel the cold." Chloe shuffled forward, the snow crunching softly under her knees. She leaned in, her lens just inches from the mother lynx's head. She could see every detail with crystalline clarity. It was a moment of pure, focused creation, the culmination of all her training, all her ambition. The story of the Siberian ghosts was right here, in the quiet, frozen face of this magnificent creature. She took a breath, held it to steady the camera, and prepared to press the shutter. And it was in that perfect, silent, unforgiving moment that a sound of broken machinery, a wet, and ragged wheezing tore through the quiet just as a small feral fury erupted from the snow. The world, for Chloe Jenkins, had contracted to the small circular frame of her viewfinder. In that privileged space, she was a creator, composing a story of silent, tragic beauty. She took a quiet, steadying breath, her finger hovering over the shutter button. Click. It was the last normal sound she would ever hear. From the dark, shadowed space beneath the mother's belly, a small fury erupted. There was no warning hiss, no startled cry. One moment the scene was one of perfect, tragic stillness. The next, it was a maelstrom of violence. Chloe's brain, tuned to the gentle art of capturing light, could not process the sudden, brutal assault. Her world, which had been a serene image, became a chaos of shocking, tearing pain. The creature, a third kitten she hadn't seen, hit her gloved hand with the force of a thrown rock. Its teeth, small but honed by genetics to the sharpness of surgical needles, punched through the reinforced, multi-layered fabric of her glove, as if it were tissue paper. It bit down not with a simple nip, but with a mindless, grinding force, its jaw locking with spastic, unnatural strength. A raw, piercing shriek tore from Chloe's throat, a sound of pure animal pain and utter confusion. She fell backward, her leg catching in the deep snow, and fell hard. Her instinct was to shake the creature off, but it was fused to her, a furious, thrashing appendage of tooth and claw. The pain was a blinding, white-hot nova that exploded behind her eyes. "Get it off! Get it off!" she screamed, the words raw and ragged, torn from a place of primal terror she never knew she possessed. The team, which had been held in a state of respectful stillness, was galvanized into action. Ben, dropping his data logger, lunged forward. "Chloe!" But Dmitri was faster. His life in the taiga had stripped away any hesitation, any layer of civilized delay between thought and action. He did not see a frightened kitten. He saw a rabid animal, a vessel of disease that needed to be put down. He covered the distance in 2 long strides. He grabbed the creature's body, noting with a flash of confusion the strange, convulsive tremors racking its small frame. He tried to pry its jaws open, but they were locked with a spastic, unyielding strength. The kitten's lungs worked like broken bellows, emitting a dry, rasping wheeze, a sound that was horribly out of place with the silent fury of its attack. There was no time for subtlety. Dimitri's other hand went to the thick-bladed knife sheathed at his belt. The blade flashed once in the cold, flat sunlight. The motion was not angry. It was brutally efficient, a single, downward plunge into the base of the kitten's skull. The creature went limp instantly. The awful wheezing sound cut off with an abrupt, final silence. Its jaw, locked by that impossible, furious strength, finally released. It dropped into the snow at Chloe's feet, a small, dead weight. Chloe scrambled backward on her hands and knees, Crab walking away from the small, dead thing, a string of incoherent sobs catching in her throat. She cradled her injured hand to her chest, her body trembling uncontrollably. The silence that rushed back into the clearing was heavier, more profound than before. It was a weighted silence, defined now by the chilling absence of that unnatural sound. Max slowly lowered his camera. His face, usually a mask of wry cynicism, was pale, his mouth slightly agape. He had captured it all, but his mind hadn't yet caught up with the sheer wrongness of what his camera had recorded. The jerky movements, the silent fury, the horrible sound of its breathing. It was rabies. It had to be, but it was a version more grotesque than he could have imagined. Ben rushed to Chloe's side, his own heart pounding a frantic rhythm against his ribs, but his eyes were drawn to the small, dead animal in the snow. He pushed himself to his feet and took a hesitant step closer. The kitten lay on its side, a dark stain spreading in the snow beneath its head. Its limbs were stiff, locked at odd angles, and its eyes were open. Ben knelt, a cold dread snaking up his spine. He saw a milky, opaque film covering them, a classic sign of severe neurological infection. Ben. Kira's voice was a strained whisper. She had come to stand beside him, her face ashen. Her scientific mind was racing, trying to fit the observed symptoms into a known framework. The aggression, the locked jaw, it presents like the furious stage of rabies. We need to get Chloe to a hospital. Her words confirmed the unease they all felt. It was rabies, their logical minds insisted. It had to be. But to see it up close, from such a small, fluffy, adorable animal, was like a child wearing the mask of a monster. The adrenaline-fueled shock began to recede, replaced by the urgent, practical demands of the situation. Mac, get the primary med kit. The big one, Ben commanded, his voice sharp, cutting through the stunned silence. Dmitri, keep an eye out. I don't want any more surprises. Dmitri nodded, his face grim. He wiped the blood from his knife on the snow, sheathed it, and unslung his grandfather's old bolt-action rifle and chambering the large 7.62 by 54R round, his gaze sweeping the silent trees. Ben turned his full attention back to Chloe. All right, Chloe, listen to me. I know it hurts, but I need to see the wound. We need to clean it. Now. With Mac's help, he gently supported her as she sat up. Chloe, her sobs subsiding into shuddering breaths, nodded numbly. The pain in her hand was a living thing, but the terrifying word that was now unspoken in the air, rabies, filled her with a cold, creeping terror that was worse than any pain. Ben took his own knife and carefully began to cut away the shredded remains of her glove. The wound was mangled. 4 deep puncture marks were arranged in an arc over her knuckles, the flesh around them already turning a dark, bruised purple. Okay, Ben said, his voice steadier than he felt. Okay, it's deep. He began to irrigate the wound with saline, flushing out the blood. Kira spurred back into action, approached them, pulling on a fresh pair of latex gloves. Ben, we need to take the kit, she said, her voice insistent. The only way to test for rabies is from brain tissue or spinal fluid, and I don't think Chloe wants some third-rate Russian doctor poking around her spinal cord. Kira, we know what it is, Ben started, exasperated. No! Her voice was sharp. We have a hypothesis. It is likely, but the hospital will want to confirm the diagnosis. Her scientific reasoning was sound. A rabies strain this isolated could be unique, and a significant discovery in its own right. Ben nodded grimly and watched as Kira pulled a red biohazard-marked bag from the medkit and carefully picked up the kitten, her movements precise and clinical. She was a scientist, and even in a crisis, data came first. Ben, this kitten has a bite on its back leg, partially healed, definitely a sign of rabies. As Ben began to apply antiseptic and dress Chloe's wounded hand, the full weight of their situation crashed down on him. They were isolated, days from help, with an injured team member who had been bitten by an animal exhibiting clear signs of rabies, a virus 100% fatal in humans once it crossed the blood-brain barrier. Luckily, that usually takes at least a month, but the task was clear. The mission was over. A new, terrifying race against time had just begun.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you enjoyed the story, please be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Join us next time for the continuation of this series as the team races to save Chloe. Until then, stay safe, and thanks for listening.